Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Aspiring Better Human podcast. Thank you to those who are joining the live stream, watching this in the replay, or perhaps listening later to wherever you get your favorite podcast. Today, I'm super excited to bring you my guest, as you can see. Say hello to the people, Chason.
Hey,
I
hey,
will let
hey.
Chason introduce himself. And what I'm going to do is bring up the topic on the screen. Today, our topic is breaking down employment barriers, and our guest is Chason Forehand. So the mic is yours. Introduce yourself to the folks here and tell them who you are and what you do, my good friend.
Hey, well, I really appreciate the platform, and I appreciate you and everything that you do, man. But my name is Chason Forehand. I am the founder of Hr-4u Incorporated. We are a charitable 501c3 based in New York, and we are fighting for equitable living wage. And we do that by elevating voices like this guy over here. I'm pointing the wrong way. Because the more people that you can elevate their voice to show how there is a huge ROI in putting people first in
Yep,
business,
absolutely.
then that teaches leaders to do so,
Right.
and increases that conversation, and on and on and on. I told David Hansen yesterday when we spoke, it's a like the Jardians commercial of the 70s. You tell two friends and they tell two friends, and so
Exactly.
on and so on.
Exactly. Well,
So
Jason, I'm so glad to
that's what
have
we're
you
doing.
here. It's
Great to be here, man.
I'm looking forward to this. Now, for those who are listening in and wanting to know a little bit more, you correct me if I'm wrong. We met well over a year ago. I
Yep.
did some solo stream live as I was experimenting with all of this. I did a solo. You reached out. You said you just loved me, loved what not loved me, but loved watching me
I
swim
do.
and do all the controls, right? And from there, we really formed a connection. And what you do is just so important. So I have some questions that I wanted to ask you.
Sure.
Anyone that looks at your LinkedIn bio, I love that you talk about you were a broken human and then you took steps. So I guess I want to just dive into it and then we're going to talk about your company. But what is it that broke you? I love that you're that honest and saying I was a broken human and then here we are today.
Yeah.
Tell us what was the catalyst to bring on that change?
Well, I was a drug addict, and I was so bad at one point that I didn't have a place to stay. I didn't have a bank account, didn't have 2 cents to rub
Wow.
together, and I had done it to myself. I came. Uh, we had trauma in our childhood, but I let that affect me, and it started affecting me in high school, and then it became so much worse when I went off to college. And here I was a person who did extremely well in my studies, was in all honors in college,
Wow.
and just failed, and not failed forward. I failed where I stood, as Jason Redman calls it, standing on the X.
Wow.
I was stuck in my own head, because in between these 2 ears is the worst enemy for me.
Right.
And I literally got stuck. Couldn't wait to get to the next high. Was just a mess. A mess. I left everything behind. I broke a lot of people. I broke myself. And I
Wow.
had to get to a place where I was willing to do the work to be okay with the person that was staring back at me. And until I did that,
Wow.
I wasn't going to get out of that situation. So when I say I'm a recovering broken human,
Yes, that's it. That's
you
it.
know, I it really is that I spent a lot of time, even after getting the addiction part taken care of and being clean for 32 years now. I had to get to a
Congrats on
place
that, by the
past
way.
that. Thank you. I had to get to a place where I was okay with the person staring back at me. And that took a lot longer than even
Wow.
getting through the addiction. The addiction portion did not take as long as I thought it was going to take because I was fed up with my life and what I was doing. But I loathed myself. And even though
Wow.
I was doing the work to repair all the other stuff, it, one addiction became other things that were still harmful. I got to a place where I'm 5'8". I got to a place where I was 400 pounds.
Wow.
And I knew better, being a chef, being somebody that knew nutrition, took all these classes and played all these sports. I knew better. And it's this process because it's taking care of the addiction, but you're not taking care of root things that are causing you to be stuck. And it really was that. It's that.
Um, your story is just so inspiring, and we hear so many stories where people have struggled, feel alone, dealing with so much. Was there that person, that moment, that community that you realized, okay, I'm going to change? Because what you do today, you're taking all that you've been, all that you are, and everything you went through, you're using your presence, your platform to help others, which I just think is incredible. So, what was it that took you out of that? Because unfortunately, you know this, so many people don't have the resources. They don't have the support system. What was yours like?
Well, I will say this. I come from a large Irish family, and my brother Robert probably was the one person that no matter what I did, and he's younger, he's almost 2 years younger than me, but he has always been a stable entity. He's the guy that went through the same trauma as I did in
Wow.
childhood, but he dealt with it and he moved forward. And so he was really a catalyst in helping me come back to my family, make amends with the people. We talk about the 12 steps and
Yep.
what you have to do. Well, you've got to make amends with yourself, but you also have to make amends with other people. And not everybody wanted to hear back from me. Not everybody wanted to make amends. And you have to be okay with that because you've done things to hurt people.
It's part of that journey, right?
It
That's
is.
part of the
It is.
journey.
And that's tough. It's tough. And again, if you're very heady like I am, where you're the hardest critic on yourself, I always have been. I hold myself to very high standards and I fail a lot. So I have to be okay with that and learn from those lessons. But I was at a place where I was at ground zero. And when there were no friends, because I didn't really know what friends were, I had
Right.
no friends, only my family, and specifically my brother Robert was the one that was like, it's okay. He had my old car, he had my old Firebird, he had a cool apartment, he made space for me on his couch, and I started repairing my life.
That's
And
incredible. I
that
it
that it takes one person.
Mhm.
If I can get out one message, it takes one human being to say, you know what,
Right,
I'm going to help someone else. I
right.
don't. It's not about accolades. It's not about notoriety. It's not about thanking. I'm going to do this out of the goodness of my heart, and I'm going to do this because I care about other people and I want to share kindness. What you talk about on a daily basis,
Right.
that's that's truly what heals other people and heals this world that we live in.
So, Jason, your story, obviously, we are the sum of our stories, and some of us are fortunate and blessed to come out of different circumstances and darkness and understand. I see you as someone who understands the obligation to pay it forward, right? You're totally that guy to me. So you're very much um, moving forward. You worked in the world of service and HR, and so you get people. You and I have been in the people business, right?
That's
Aspects.
right.
I've been in sales and operations and overall like public awareness, and you've been the support system in HR. But you then saw that as broken. And I love how you formed, and anyone who is watching this or watching the replay, you could look at Chasen's background and see the community he has built. I'm above his head. His hair is
Yeah.
blocking my face.
Uh, uh,
But it's a great background because you've 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 connected with all of these folks who are purpose driven, like we are, that understand that we must use our presence, our talents, our gifts, and help others. So could you talk about that, knowing you needed to shift career, right? You're still in that realm. Talk a little bit about that for people who don't know you, right? What's
Well,
that
it's
been like?
interesting. I fell into human resources just because I was the friendly guy that trained people and was better at hiring than the chef owner or other people in that industry. So, you know what? I use a mantra, and I love Michelle made a comment about some of this, even when you and David and her were talking. Keep the human in HR is my
Right.
mantra and logo in my HR company. And I only work with service-based people that are giving back to the community, whether a nonprofit or a benefit company of some kind, social good. Anywho, I fell into that, and really just had that grow, and be up to places where director of operations and onward, because I like people and I was good at it and they let me do it.
Yeah.
And where I am now and why we created Hr-4u is because even after the pandemic, I put so much time from 2020 on doing pro bono work for nonprofits and social good entities, over 900 hours, that I realized that even in the nonprofit world that they're broken, and that
Yes.
there's a lot of ego, and there's a lot of,
Right.
it's all about me and my name. I told David this
Right.
yesterday, and I say this all the time. I want Hr-4u to be known for what we're doing and what our impact is. I don't want it to be about Chason Forehand. And the day when the mic can drop is when people go, "Oh, Hr-4u, I love that they're doing blah blah blah." And it's not. I love what Chason's doing with
Right.
that. I really
Exactly.
want to get to that place. And so, coming full circle, it really is about creating an environment where we're empowering people to change, empowering leaders to understand the ROI of putting people first, and making changes within their organizations or within themselves so that they put people first. And that's going to change a lot of the socioeconomic issues that we have in poverty, crime, homelessness, food insecurity. It's all going to benefit when we start to put people first.
What I love and why I was drawn to you in the conversations we had, and being part and participating in watching what you're doing, is that you, and I'd like to believe that I do as well, there are those of us who've had careers. We are people. We love just figuring it out, connecting. And we come to projects and departments and organizations with heart and soul. And what you talked about seeing HR broken, and of course, I come from the nonprofit world myself, and
Yeah.
I continue to work with nonprofits. And there's the things that you and I value the most, right, are not they're not in the metrics of what is considered successful. And I
Mm,
mean that I get, and you know this from fundraising yourself and looking for money. Raising funds, working with donors,
mhm.
dealing with trustees, all of that is so important because otherwise, how do you open your doors and what do you do?
Yeah.
And the people stuff often are secondary, not necessarily because there are bad people in nonprofits or corporations, but it's just the way that it's been. And so, your organization, the things that I'm trying to do, what others are trying to do, is say, hey, it's okay. You can be a leader, you can be successful, you can figure things out and
Yeah.
still have heart and soul and care about people. So how do we do that, right?
Yeah.
How do we do it all? How do you get the donors and the trustees and those who are sponsoring your exhibitions? You're doing all of that, but how do we not forget? And I think that's what you and I carry the torch on. How do we not forget? It's the people who are serving the public, making your building run, having all of that done, that are so vital, because they're just as important, right?
Yeah.
It's not a hierarchy of who's more important, right? You and I believe in the power of people and
Yeah.
how important it is to see the big picture.
Absolutely.
So I'll stop preaching
No,
and
no,
let you
I
comment.
love it. I love it. Yeah, I mean, that's one of the main things that I love about you is it is not about it isn't about metrics and it isn't about all this other stuff. It
Right,
for you and I and others, it really is about how do we change the narrative and still accomplish the goals.
right.
So I appreciate that. And I said to you earlier, I see David and Michelle. I have to connect back with Michelle. It's been like over a year. Michelle, I'm sorry. I'm gonna reach out. I apologize.
Yes, you did say that before we came on air. You
Yep,
did say you were
I
going to
did.
reach out to Michelle. So David's put in a question here. What can you say to CEOs to convince them about the need to put people first and pay a living wage, Jason? Like, what do you do? Because you are totally in that realm. How do you have those conversations?
Well, it's interesting because David and I talked about this yesterday in our conversation, and it is the methodology is to shine a light on the work you're doing, the work David's doing, the work that Tiffany Castano and these 69 now partners,
That's great.
63 partners, 3 strategic alliances, and 3 sponsors that we have, and we're going to be announcing even more coming up. But we shine a light on what they're doing and show leaders how you can still have this tremendous ROI. But specifically, when I'm having conversations, David, with CEOs, and I've had 696 conversations with leaders over this past year, this is part of our impact report that's coming out. One of the things that I talk about specifically are stories like I've posted multiple times of a Chick-fil-A owner, because this is service industry, so it's really tough.
Right,
So I talk about this service, the Chick-fil-A owner who was in an area that was $11 an hour minimum wage. He started paying people $17 an hour, and he saw this tremendous
yep,
gain and boom.
yep,
People stayed longer. There was greater retention. He had less turnover. There
right,
were less uniforms being sent. He had more productivity. People were happier.
right,
He took it upon himself to figure out the math. So busting the myths that you can't do it because you won't make enough profit, you will make more profit
right.
and you will be
Exactly.
more profitable. You
Right.
can figure out the data is there to show people what it's like when you have turnover, how much that really cost you, how much it costs you when people are disengaged.
It's wow. I think we'll need another couple of episodes to talk about this, because for me, I had done what I had done naturally. I love people. I loved where I was. We had 7 million people a year. It was huge revenues. I loved it all. And to tell you the truth, I didn't focus on the numbers. I love to talk about the numbers because it reinforces for me
Yeah,
what I think the teams that I worked with, side by side, led, collaborated with, it's a tribute to what they were able to accomplish.
yeah,
But when I was a young manager and when I was thrown into that public realm of service, that now when I think about it, it was a calling. I didn't do it on purpose. It was subconscious. Kind of fell into it the way you just got described falling into HR. Um, Thinking to myself, I know that we need to get to this number, but I can't get there alone. And I can't get there just by wishing it to be or telling people to
right.
do things, right? How do you connect with everyone that you're working with? and saying, how are we going to get there? You get the best ideas. You get motivated people. You get to see people that can, I think it's the best part, outperform you and outshine you and go
Right.
on. Like that is just great. Leadership today, and you know this, leadership is not that. Leadership is all about the title and my position and a place of power and money and all that. And that's
Yeah.
a whole other episode. So, so I'm being mindful of time because we're a 30-minute show, and I just want to make sure that we get it all in. But that piece, right? So breaking down these barriers. My question to you, Chason, anyone that's listening that is in a leadership role, anyone that aspires to be a leader, or anyone just in an organization, what tips do you give to start breaking down those barriers? We've talked about the people element, but what
Yeah.
tips do you get? Practical tips that can help someone.
I think the first thing is that you've got to take care of yourself, because you can't take care of others unless you take care of yourself. And I'm the work. It's great to preach that, but I'm terrible at it myself. I'm really working on it.
Right,
But self care and
right,
being,
right,
we don't talk about this enough, but each day there's conversations about suicide and about the pressures that just society puts on you as a leader, and that you put on yourself if you're someone like me where you're just so tough on yourself.
right.
So I think the first thing I would say to anybody is that you've got to take care of yourself, because you can't pour from an empty cup, if you've ever heard that. You really need to
Yep.
be in a good
Amen. Yep.
place.
Absolutely.
Then the second thing is listen more than you speak. Listen to other people, take in viewpoints. Don't assume that you know what other people want or
Right.
need.
Right.
And that was a great lesson for me really early on in my career, where I thought I knew everything and really needed to learn to be quiet and be
Do you
present and
do
listen.
you do you find this, sorry to cut you off, do you find this to be true? I too had to learn those lessons, and I've now become a big believer in the pause. Sometimes I have to not totally not respond or react in the moment. Say, let's pick this up tomorrow or the day after. I think sometimes we need to process, right?
Yes.
And as a new leader, a young leader, you sometimes feel the obligation that you're just supposed to jump in and this is the solution.
Let's
This is
fix it
what we
now.
should do.
Yeah.
Right. You have choice A, B, or C. And that's not it. Because if you take some time and think about it, there may be D, E, and F, or G
Very
or
good.
H is the better option,
Yeah.
right? Because then you could come back with a clear head.
No, I absolutely agree, and have said multiple times where I need to unpack this, or I need to process this. I need to come back to this situation. I think that, and I do that even more now with the nonprofit, because there's constant pivoting. There's
Right.
constant ebb and flow in what we do, and based on what's happening in humanity and
Right.
what's going on in,
Yeah.
not only in the world but in our community here,
Right.
just in New York, and then
Right.
breaking it down to Newburgh and this area that I'm in. So yeah, I think there's tremendous power in being intuitive enough to say, hey, I've got to step back for a minute and take in all this information, and then let's discuss it further, and set that time.
So, Jason, we've been talking about leadership, what brought us into the roles of leadership and what we do. What do you tell someone who is on the job search, looking for a job? Like, how do they use what they know? How do they um, start to break through that, right? There's been plenty of positive change that we're no longer in a society that there's still a lot of work to do, but there's we're no longer in a society that there's just like the central casting person that needs to be in these roles. But if you're a job seeker, how do people themselves stand out? you guide and we talk to executives about how to change. How does the individual out there pounding the pavement or looking online, how do they start to break through? How do they get your attention if you're filling a job?
Well, I think there's a couple of things. Anna Morgan and Sarah Flip, Michelle, I think, has even talked about this. You've talked about this, but I think that the real thing, two parts. One, if you want to get people's attention, talk about what I call the XYZ. Here's what I've done. Here's the impact it had, and here's how it changed our organization within our group, how we did things.
Right.
And I think that's that XYZ of showing your value.
Right.
Because a lot of companies are looking for not just a list of what you've done, but how do you stand out? And then on the other side of it, if you're working for someone and you want to break down barriers, because I kind of took that question to be twofold.
Hmm.
If you're inside and you're in a toxic place or you're in a place that has barriers, don't be silent. Be someone who is courageous enough to stand up and
Right.
have conversations, not be aggressive to get yourself in trouble, but be don't sit back and allow it to happen, because then you're just
Absolutely.
condoning poor behavior.
You've and people who know me and listened, the like many on this planet, it was the COVID shutdowns and rebooting society
Yeah.
afterwards that changed me, because it was a period in my career, in my life, where my sole responsibility was taking care of people, which was something that I sort of always did, but that was the only job, right? They were no longer the metrics. It just matters, how are we going to do this? How are we going to be safe? How are we going to take care of people? How are we going to
Yep.
communicate to them? And then once you get to be in that stream, you can't not be in that stream anymore. And people would have probably always have looked at me in one particular light. Diplomatic, makes it happen, everything's fine. Something within me changed and I became a little bit noisier or more vocal, in a professional way, obviously, but I was forever changed by understanding the power, if you will, given to me, that I have this power, this presence, that I can use my voice, my platform, my presence to help other people. And that's what I love about your organization. And I hope those that are have been listening will take something away from this, or they themselves be inspired by everything you've talked about, we've talked about. You can be the change, right?
Absolutely.
You can be the change that you seek. And you can start with you, and it can happen with a colleague, it can happen with a new job, you can inspire your boss, you can inspire your team. I just think that being quiet serves no one,
Right.
right? Right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And I have a friend from the West Coast, my friend Grace. We were the Will and Grace show, and maybe you've seen her, Jason. The noisier Will was hugely beneficial and successful, but Grace not as popular as I once was.
That's awesome.
So I'm looking at the time. We're at 12:28. One, we talked about. I always like to do things in threes. So we talked about your story about what broke you, what was broken in human resources. We talked about your journey. We shared our story in the journey. Now, in the final moments here, and I'm going to also put up on the screen your website so people can connect with you. The question I have for you: what do you want the listener? What do you want the listener to take away? Typo there, to take away from our conversation. Like, what's the thing, other than going to your website and learning more about your organization? What's the thing you want them to know, or remember, or think about?
You can be the change. You can absolutely, one person can make a huge difference in this world. You can be the change. It doesn't matter where you start or how you start. You
I
can be the
love it.
change that breaks down barriers.
That's fantastic. I just remember being that complaining person. You work with colleagues, and this is years ago. Complain, complain, complain. How come they don't do anything? How come they aren't seeing it? How come they aren't responding? And then I had this moment, Jason, and I realized, hey, wait a minute. I am the they, right? And it switched everything around, right? Because I'm
Yeah,
part of
you're
it.
part of they. You're part of
Yes,
they.
exactly. And so if more people understood that, and we're human, we're going to complain and we're going to
Yeah,
gossip and all that kind of stuff that messy stuff humans do. But when you step back and you have this privilege to lead people and be part of something, just be part of the solution. I love that.
absolutely.
I absolutely love that. And I want to make sure that I say this out loud. And so for anyone that's listening and not watching, Chason, you can be found on LinkedIn, Chason Forehand, and your website is hr-4u.org. Am I saying that
Yep,
correctly? It's the dash.
correctly. Yes, sir.
That's great. And I invite everybody to really check that out and look at your work. And I just want to say congratulations on the 69 beautiful faces behind you there. And I'm so honored to be one of them. It's really, really great. I hope to join you on a future show. You yourself do
Yes.
shows, and you're out there spreading your light and your joy. And I thank you, my friend, and I hope
Thank you so
this was a
much.
beneficial conversation for those who are listening and just want to do better, right? Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. You can catch the replay or listen to us wherever you get your favorite podcast. Take care, everyone, and thank you, Jason.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.